the Doorbench Radio Show, the official podcast of doorbench.com.
Welcome to the Doorbench Radio Show. I'm your host, Vin Curigliano of AAVIM Technology in Melbourne, Australia, and I am joined again by Pete Brown of Microsoft in Maryland in the United States. How you doing today, Pete?
Good. You sound so exasperated to say you're joined again by me. It's like, what a chore.
No, that was just me taking a breath before I got to the important part, mate.
Yeah, you're like, and Pete, yep.
Yeah, it's Pete from Microsoft here again.
Then it's great. Yeah, what I usually need to do a weather report we start here, right? So all hell is breaking loose.
Well, is that it? All hell is breaking loose.
Yeah, I don't know, like what kind of visual do I want to give? There's the sky is falling. Supposedly we're going to get tons of thunder and lightning. And so if I drop off in the middle of the show, there's 50-50 whether it was a heart attack from something you said or if it was thunder and lightning outside. So.
Right. So you got a storm incoming, and you've also got smoke from the your friendly neighbourhood Canadians there with their bushfire. Actually, they don't call them bushfires; they call them wildfires. There you go, from the wildfires.
Well, considering 90% of Canada is wilderness, and some of it's going to burn once in a while. I don't know why, but it sucks that it always blows down here right into the mid-Atlantic.
Yeah.
But what are they going to do about it, you know?
Yeah, I thought it was kind of like more central. It is pretty much wilderness, isn't it? Apart from the key cities, north and south. East and west. It is much wilderness. Well, there you go. Yeah. So the smoke is not hassling you today?
No, it was really bad a couple of days ago, just before the World Cup, right? And then somebody must have begged, pled, and prayed, and it went away mostly right before the World Cup so people can have their sports ball, and then not terrible today.
Yeah. The universe somehow provided a prevailing wind to clear it from New Jersey. I don't know. Pretty amazing.
Yeah, which is amazing and I'm sorry to everybody who lives in New Jersey, mostly because you live in New Jersey, but I've driven through New Jersey so many times and the smoke might have been an improvement.
Okay. All right. We'll leave that one there, I think.
Yeah, I need to we haven't gotten enough hate mail in a while, so I need to make sure we amp it up a bit.
Okay, so we're going to get some from the New Jerseyans. All righty. Now, today we have a very special guest joining us from Sydney, Australia this time, Pete.
I am surrounded.
Yes, surrounded. So you better behave. And that is Kim Ryrie, who is the co-founder of Fairlight, which in 1979 revolutionized music production with the world's first commercially available sampling synthesizer and real-time music sequencer, the Fairlight CMI, aka the computer musical instrument. The instrument opened up an infinite palette of sound that became ubiquitous in the 1980s, being used by a cavalcade of artists during that time, defining the sound of popular music of the era. The game-changing innovation continued through to professional audio post-production with the MFX multi-track hard disk recording system that defined digital audio workstations throughout the 90s and beyond. Welcome, Kim.
Thank you, everyone. That sounds interesting. I sort of can't remember it all, but yeah, I think we did do that.
Well, I had to actually read that out. And, it's the tip of the iceberg, Kim. But, that kind of covered at least the CMI is probably what you're most renowned for. And that's something that, now Pete's a bit younger than me. So when you first introduced the instrument in 1979, I was in my kind of mid-teens. And I remember this thing was everywhere, Kim. I mean, it was literally everywhere, but it was appearing on things like science shows and even morning shows. And you've got these hosts and co-hosts looking at this thing going, what is this thing, right? And it was pretty funny because, you've got all these, I think 1979, so you've got these hosts in kind of these almost leisure suits type of thing, kind of sitting there going, oh, well, what does this thing actually do type of thing? And the most interesting thing for them was when, someone spoke into it and then they could play back the vocal stuff. But, and I just remember it was all over the place for, non-musical type of shows. Let's put it that way, science kind of based shows and the type. I mean, it even ended up on Sesame Street, with
with Herbie.
Yeah, I think it was on Mr. Rogers or something.
But Sesame Street, Herbie Hancock was, demoing it to like a room full of kids with eyes about as big as plates, going, what is this?
True.
Even though I'd never actually had the opportunity to ever get in front of one, only because, literally, what was I going to do? Sell 2 houses to actually afford one.
They were a bit expensive, I must admit.
Yeah, but that's not to say that I wasn't very familiar with the Fairlight sound because, later on in the 80s, I had a couple of samplers in my arsenal, and each one of them, I had like volumes of Fairlight sound. So back then, no one was really au fait to, not copying sample. Everyone was just, everyone was stealing the Fairlight sound. So I had boxes of Fairlight sounds for both my samplers. One was the Ensoniq Mirage, and what an awesome instrument that was. Yep. And the other one was the Emax. Emulator Emax, which I loved and I should never have sold. So, but I literally had boxes of Fairlight sound. So something I was very, very familiar with. Something even to this day, I still haven't had the opportunity to be in front of one. Oh
wow.
There's a couple floating around in Melbourne. So one of my closest friends sent me a photo. He was at one of the local synth museum. It's kind of like a museum, but you can go in there and they run classes and that type of stuff. It's called MESS here in Melbourne, Melbourne Electronic Synth. I've forgotten the name of it now. I'll catch it a little bit later. But it was under glass. So it was a 2X and it was under glass. So that one is obviously not running. I know of a 30A, which was the kind of, the re-release, so to speak. But there wouldn't be many floating around. Kim?
Yeah, I really don't know how many are still running. There's a guy in Sydney called Peter Wilk who keeps them going somehow.
Yep.
There have been a lot of mods done to them over the years, adding hard disks and so on. We had the very first version. Did you want to talk about how we sort of got started with that?
Well, I think a great way to start this would be is if you can give us a personal history of your personal history with music and technology and how that actually led you to founding Fairlight, because there's a great story pre-Fairlight as well, So if you can give us an overview of that I think that'll be a great way to start.
Well, for me, it probably started with Wendy Carlos's Switched On Bach record.
Right.
That was what just blew me away. And I just wanted my own Moog synthesizer, and obviously that was out of the question. But I started an electronics magazine in 1971 called Electronics Today. It became international. We had a UK edition and a French edition.
Right.
And we did DIY projects every month, about 3 projects a month. And the only way I could think of getting a synthesizer for myself was to talk everyone into doing it as a DIY project.
Why not?
And so it was my father's magazine company. We had motoring magazines and golf and cricket and stuff.
Oh, right. Okay.
And anyway, so they said, the boss's son wants to do a synthesizer. Holy crap, I suppose we better do it. So we were very busy. We found a guy called Trevor Marshall who'd just come out of electrical engineering school. And I'm not sure, I can't remember how we came across Trevor, but he effectively did most of the design for what became the ETI 4600. So it had 4 oscillators, It had a patch bay instead of wires.
Yeah, that's right.
Yeah, and it took about 10 monthly issues, to describe all the sections, so there was, voltage control oscillators, filters, keyboard controller, the whole thing. And at the end of it all, I'm thinking, well, hang on, this only makes Moog type sounds.
Yeah.
Surprise, surprise.
Yeah.
And, there was just no way I could make natural sounds with it. But it was when the first microprocessors had just come out. And I called up my school friend, Peter Vogel. We used to make stuff at school together.
Right.
Years earlier.
Yep.
For nothing. And we had no money. So I figured Peter would be a good way to start. We were used to doing that.
Yep.
So I said, what are you doing? He said, oh, not much. What are you doing? Actually, he was doing some video products at the time because colour TV had just come out.
Right, yes.
And he'd done a colorizer that turned luminance into colour. So you could mix up about 6 different colours. And, that was all pretty interesting. But we had a workshop underneath my grandmother's house on Sydney Harbour. And it was where Lawrence Hargrave, who's a pioneer of aviation in Australia, used to design his aeroplanes.
Right. Okay.
And so we had a place to work, and I said, do you want to design, the world's greatest synthesizer? I used some sort of stupid language like that.
As you do, yeah.
And Peter said, oh, yeah, well, how's that going to work? I said, well, we're going to use these microprocessor things, and, we can, if we have enough oscillators, and we can control them all, because, of course, with analog synths, you couldn't control anything. You had to remember where all the knobs were, and it was just impossible. So somehow he agreed to do it, and he was so we started up, but within months, someone learnt that we were working on a digital synthesizer. So, you should meet Tony first, because he's interested in digital music, and he knows all about microprocessors. So we met Tony, and Tony had prototyped, hand-wired, with a grant from the government, to design an electronic music teaching machine for the Canberra School of Music.
Right.
And what it did was, you could draw on a screen, a monochromatic green screen with a light pen, because, of course, this was before the mouse had been invented. We're talking, he would have started this in about 73-ish, something like this.
Well, that's even more astonishing that there was a light pen on a screen at that point.
Yeah, and he had this all running. So there were 32 little fader bars on the screen, and you could wind them up and down with the light pen, and that was the first harmonic up to the 32nd harmonic.
Right.
And in real time, it would generate this hideous sort of noise.
Yeah, so it was additive synthesis, right?
Additive synthesis at its core, And anyway, his processor used 2 Motorola 6800s. They're 8-bit processors. They ran at 1 megahertz each.
Look out.
But he'd organised it so that they took turns to talk to common memory at 2 megahertz, so that instead of interrupting one processor and waiting while you went and got a cup of coffee for it to come back and do something, you could just put data from one processor to the other quite quickly. And this was the basis of Tony's parallel processing.
Parallel processing, yeah.
Yeah, so one of them looked after all the I/O, such as input from the keyboard and stuff, and the other handled waveform memory control.
Yep.
So we saw this, and by this time, Tony had probably spent a couple of years on it. He'd hand-wired. There would have been something like, let me think, probably about 14 circuit boards, about 8-inch by 8-inch. Each board would have had, 60 chips on it, and they're all hand-wired on the back of the board with
hand soldered as well,
hand soldered, with Teflon coated tiny wires. It was just a complete and utter nightmare.
Would have been a rat's nest. So this was the M8, right? So it wasn't.
This was the M8.
It wasn't a Quasar 1 or 2, which kind of looked like I don't know what it was kind of like a weird.
Yeah, look, it would have been some sort of prototype, which we never saw. I never saw his previous things.
Previous ones,
I think they were prototypes, but we were not involved in any way with that. So
with the 1 or 2, yeah. Okay.
Yeah, so when we saw this thing, it was a huge box. It ran hot because all the chips were not CMOS in those days. TTL, the memory ran red hot. There was 4K. That's K with 3 zeros. K of memory, static memory, by the way, not dynamic memory, that ran red hot. And what he did was he could play, I don't know how many, each wave, so we had 32 harmonics. I think each waveform was about 100 and, do you want all this gory detail? It was like 128 bytes long, something. I think each wave, one cycle was about 128 bytes long. We're talking 8-bit bytes too, by the way.
Yeah.
But then we had another 8 bits that could control amplitude. So it was like pseudo 16 bits. And so there were, X number of dozen of these waveforms that could fit in the 4K of memory. And then there were 8 channels you could play at a time. And the way that pitch was done was that you simply played the waveform faster.
Right.
So we could do up to 200K-ish sample rate.
Right.
So if you wanted to play bass, you'd be running it at about 5K. And so we had Tony had, did he have that in that design? I can't remember. But there was a tracking filter. It would have been a 4-pole switched filter that tracked the highest harmonic you wanted to hear of the waveform, depending on what. So you might have been playing 5K sample rate. So of course you'd have to be attenuating that, at about 2K, something like that, or 1.
So these were like just a standard. Was it kind of like a low pass filter, like a 12 dB or 24 dB low pass?
It was that's right. It was a low pass 4-pole, 24 dB per octave filter. That sort of thing.
Awesome.
Yeah, so that was how it all started. And because Tony wasn't quite sure what functions he would need for all of these channels, there would have been about 8 to 10 circuit boards, and each board did a different function 8 times.
Oh.
So every board was different, like literally every board was different. And there were, as I said, 12 or 14. By the time you did the graphics controller, the light pen controller, all this sort of stuff, and dual processor, then memory, quite a number of boards. Anyway, I said, can we take this over or can we license it or do something? He said, yeah, just get it out of here. I'm sick of it. But if you want it, you've got to deliver something to the Canberra School of Music one day.
Of course, yep.
And so we worked out some sort of royalty deal. I can't remember exactly what it was. And Tony was pleased to see the end of it. As you can imagine, this would have been a big project. To give you an idea, this was before floppies even, pretty much. So to boot the M8, there was a roll on the floor of punch paper tape, about a foot in diameter. And it would take an hour and a Teletype 33 to boot the processors.
Oh, joy.
All right. And yet we still took this on. You'd have to think these guys are out of their mind.
But what year was that? That was like 74. No, hang on.
This would have been 75, 76.
75, 76.
Because we founded the company with the $300 that we actually had to our name was what it pretty much cost to register the company.
And that was 1975, right?
That was 75.
Now, you know what we missed? How you named the company. I know, you've told it a million times.
Yeah, so, well, as I mentioned, we were on the waterfront, Sydney Harbour, facing the Harbour Bridge.
Yeah.
And every few hours a hydrofoil would go past, and one of them was called the Fairlight, which was named after a suburb in Sydney.
Awesome.
And Peter, we were thinking, will we call the company Rye Vog, Vogel, or Vog Rye?
Yeah, why not? Yeah.
And then the Fairlight drove past, and Peter said, "Why do we call it the Fairlight?" And I said, "Oh no, that's all a bit oomy-goomy, isn't it?" And, and anyway, it stayed. So that's where the name came from.
And so it's actually a suburb as well.
Yeah, it's a suburb up near Manly.
All right. Oh, yeah, I know Manly quite well.
North Sydney.
Yeah. So did the Fairlight hydrofoil go to Fairlight?
Yeah, it did. It went between. Well, no, it went to Manly.
Went to Manly. Yeah.
Imagine we could have had the Manly CMI.
The Manly CMI. So is this a hydrofoil still around? Because I've been to Sydney quite a few times. I've only been on those.
Well, Peter bought it.
Peter bought it?
Yeah, it was sort of falling apart after a while.
Oh, so there was only ever one hydrofoil?
No, there was probably three of them, I think, 3 or 4.
Right.
And there were these huge things with dual giant diesel engines, and they used about $100 worth of diesel a second. And
why not? It was the 70s,
Yeah, and so when they were put out to pastures, someone said, "Oh, would you like to buy a hydrofoil?" And Peter nearly bought it until he worked out how much it was going to cost to actually moor it somewhere.
Yeah,
and nor did it work particularly well. Yeah. So that was a bit of a problem. But anyway, but we did get the life ring. What do you call them?
The life preserver.
The life preserver with Fairlight on.
Yeah.
So they gave that to us for free.
Yeah.
And you guys even have a mention on the hydrofoil Wikipedia page where it says the Fairlight CMI, a pioneering digital synthesizer, was named for the Fairlight 2, which was itself named after Fairlight, a suburb of Sydney.
Oh, there you go.
It also says it was scrapped in 88.
Oh, is that right? Oh, okay. Well, I didn't know that. Yeah, I've heard of Wikipedia. I must look at it one day.
I've only ever been on those Manly, the Manly to circle a key, those kludgy, what are they called? Ferry things,
Ferries, yeah. No, they're good value.
It's called a boat, Vin, yeah.
Oh, it's kind of boat.
Yeah.
So long story short, we sort of, after a year or two, we realised this was going to be hard work and no one would want it because it sounded horrible. We couldn't work out how to make it sound nice. We did design Tony's boards onto printed circuit boards, but by the time we'd done that, I said, "Peter, how are we going to serve, a dealer's going to need, 12 different circuit boards, as spare parts and so on. And nor did it do anything that sounded particularly nice. So then the 16K RAM chip, the dynamic RAM chip, came out.
All right.
And we thought, hang on a minute, this is amazing, unbelievable. 16K bytes, no bits on a chip.
Yeah.
We could do one board that had its own 16K bytes, and we could have 8 boards that were all the same.
Yeah.
And by this time also the floppy had come out, and actually Tony had designed a prototype of the floppy controller, which was great.
That was handy. Yep.
So this also was coming together, and a couple of years later, I mean, I won't go through all the gory details, but we did manage to pull a bit of money together from family. This was before really venture capital existed.
Yeah, of course.
There was obviously no internet. There was, the first Apple came out, I think it was 77, wasn't it? Something like that. So it was, so Tony was way ahead of his time. And I think what happened then was we were employing anyone who said they might be able to program.
Right.
If we could give them some books that told them how to do it.
Yeah.
And Peter was, we were finding some pretty bright people because we were really the only game in town if you wanted a job in computers, there was no other local computer manufacturer.
Mm.
And so we started getting a team together. Probably then we moved to a real building in Rushcars Bay, actually the building where my father's magazine company moved to. So we're on a different floor in that same building.
So how did you actually fund the development during that time where...
Well, yeah, look, funny you should mention, we did anything to make money. A doctor came to us and said, "Oh, look, I'd like a machine where old people can wear a pendant around their neck, and if they push a button, it'll send an alarm off and it'll bring people to come and rescue them."
Of course.
And so we thought, oh, yeah, no, we can do that. No worries. And so we did that. That was called the Vital Call.
Yep.
But we were only being paid. We weren't part of that business. We were literally only being paid contractor fees. We had the Australian Navy turn up to the front door because they were designing their own submarines and they needed a way of detecting other submarines and determining whether they were submarines or whales. And Peter told them, "We don't do military, sorry."
So you had the men in black showing up at the door going, "Excuse me."
They were men in black.
"Excuse me, boys, what are you up to in your basement there?"
Yeah, that's right.
But you guys also invented the life alert long before it became a meme on TV in the 80s. So
is that what they're called there?
Yeah, the pendant, the old "I've fallen and I can't get up" ads that they had on TV in the 80s.
Yeah, so we had that. That would have been it was before the music machine. So that would have been about 77, 8-ish sort of thing.
Mm.
And we used the quasar. So we used the computer part of Tony's machine.
Yep.
You know, in every city, they had to have one of those that would ring up all these units and they'd say, "Yes, I'm still here." And so we did all that. We then had the telephone company, Telstra, come to us and say, "Oh, we need a beeper system." You know, do you remember beepers? You know, when people had
The pages.
pages?
Yeah.
So
Or beepers,
yeah, they needed a system that managed that in each city. So we sold them the computers to do that. So in other words, we had the computer running, but that was about it. We didn't have the music side of it going.
So this was the quasar, right?
This was all the quasar, yeah.
And I found yesterday after we had our pre-chat, I found the operation manual for the Quasar M8, and I'm thinking, "Oh, this is cool. It's going to have a lot of stuff about the music side." Nothing. There was nothing. It was about research and scientific analysis and stuff. So
that's true, actually, because we had another guy who, and you're only reminding me about that, who was on the Reserve Bank board in Canberra, and he had come up with these algorithms to predict the value of the Australian dollar against the US dollar and the pound and everything else.
Right, okay.
And so he needed a computer for that, and he was going to teach all his students because he also taught at the Canberra University. So we sold, I think, a couple of quasars to predict the Australian dollar. I mean, you know, this is the sort of crazy stuff. And then we had Remington office machines who wanted to sell an Australian-made business computer. And we said, "Well, we know nothing about business, let alone business software." "Oh, that's all right. We'll do that. We just need an operating system and a computer." So we did that, and that was built into furniture, but they needed...
So this big quasar thing you were building into furniture?
Yeah, into office furniture. We went to a company called Namco that made furniture.
Yeah.
But they needed a megabyte of disk memory.
Right.
And by now there was a double-sided 8-inch disk that had come out, and a megabyte? Let me just think for a minute. Maybe it was 4 megabytes.
Double-sided, probably. No, that was...
double-sided. No, I think it was only like 256K on each side or something like that.
Yeah, 512, because the end of the... Because I've still got floppy disks, so don't ask me why, but I've still got floppy disks, and I think they're 1 megabyte with the double-sided ones. So...
Were they? Yeah, half a meg per side, you mean?
Well, the 8-inch ones, though, were...
It might have been something like that. So anyway, Shugart had bought out these drives that did double-sided. I'm thinking, "Oh, this is great. We can do the this is the Remington project," and they ordered 100 machines. So I'm thinking, "Oh, this is fantastic," you know. And so there were these massive 4 of them, double-sided disk drives in these cabinets.
Yeah.
But the problem was that every now and then the head on one side would write to data on the other side of the disk.
Oops.
Awesome.
But the wrong head would write.
Yeah.
And we pointed this out to Shugart and said, yes, we know. Sorry, we're going to stop production. I said, well, you can't stop production. I've just accepted an order for 100 of these things, which is 400 of your drives. And we'll go broke and get sued and the whole catastrophe. And they said, well, we have worked out a modification we can do by hand. I suppose we could do that for you. So they did that, and that did work. And fortunately, within months, YE Data, which was a Japanese company, brought out an absolutely gorgeous double-sided drive. Oh, there was another problem, by the way, with the Shugart drives, and that is that it would tend to scrape the oxide off the discs.
Oh, lovely. The drive only has one purpose, and it sounds like it failed at both of those one purpose. Yeah.
Well, it was good at actually destroying itself by the sound.
Well, they ended up. Well, then we discovered that IBM made a disc that you couldn't scrape to bits. So we ended up using those as well. So, so this is the days when we learnt how to make things reliable.
Yeah. And were those computers was that the PCB era? It wasn't the rat's nest of wire era, was it?
Oh no, we designed all the computer boards onto PCB.
Right. Yeah, of course.
I think it's amazing that you all were just a general computer company before this, and I never see you come up in the list of early computer that are being sold to companies or anything like that. But this was a pretty big deal.
Well, we didn't see it as that. We were really completely disinterested in all of those markets, to be honest. So we the sooner. In fact, we also did a car burglar alarm called the Sleeping Dog.
That's so Australian. Sleeping dog car alarm.
And someone drove into our back, our car park one day and he'd melted the entire wiring loom in his Mercedes.
Oh,
doing the installation.
But that's because it wasn't an Australian-made car. That'll teach him a lesson.
Well, it was because he made a few mistakes when he
that too.
And
that wouldn't have happened to a Holden or a Falcon. No way.
That's true. Yeah. So, look, these are all the fun and adventure things that led to. I'm surprised in retrospect, that we did bring out the prototype CMI in only 4 or 5 years. We had that in 79.
Yeah. So there was a Quasar M8 CMI. So that was just
no. There was never a Quasar that played CMI. No, that's fluff that somehow got onto the internet. There was only ever a CMI.
Well, thank you for correcting that.
Yeah. There was only the Quasar that Tony made.
Yeah.
And there was only one of them.
Yes.
And that was the hand wired.
Right. So the one that you've done all the development work, moved all of the electronics to PCBs, that was never called a Quasar.
No.
Right.
Never. Except as a computer. We called it
as a computer. Right. Okay.
As a computer it was a Quasar. There was never a Quasar CMI.
Right.
There is a whole history page on the internet that is completely wrong there.
There you go. Yeah. So we've just corrected that. Thank you very much.
Yes.
Because that's where I've got the information, and it was actually a quote, and I can't remember who the quote was from. So I didn't write down. It wasn't you or Peter, because I would have put down the quote as you or Peter, but I've just done it in my research, and I've put it in quotes, as in I've pulled this from somewhere, right?
Yeah.
Because I went pretty deep into doing as much research as I can leading into the show. So there you go. So we've just corrected that. There was never a Quasar CMI, but I had no idea the level of Quasars that you'd actually sold into the business and the research and all the rest of it. Because all the history have just said, we were making these computers, but it was never any mention that it was these computers that you and Peter were manufacturing and getting out into that corporate space. We'll call it corporate and scientific and educational spaces, right?
Yeah.
Non-musical. I had no idea they were the Quasar M8. So there you go. And why wouldn't they be? I mean, it's a dual processor computer, even though it was the size of a small bar fridge.
Yeah.
But it was, a small There was a dual processor computer in what was that? It was that 5-10 year. No, it was probably 15 years ahead of its time before dual processors started appearing. Probably 20.
Yeah. By the way, when we were in the basement, one of the ways we made a bit of money then was, you remember I mentioned that Peter was working on video.
Yeah.
We made a thing called the electric paint box, I think we called it.
Right.
And that was, we sort of commercialized his colorizer, and we were selling those to, TV stations and things like that. And not many. We would have probably only ever sold half a dozen or 10 or something. But for us, that was a lot of money.
Now, neither of you had formal training in electronics or
no,
computer.
And Peter was really the designer. I'd done it, but I wasn't as good as Peter, so I let Peter handle all of that stuff. I freaked around. Like, one of the things I noticed, there was a photo of me in the basement where I'd built a touch-sensitive keyboard, and
Right.
every key had a magnet and a coil under it.
Right.
Mm-hmm.
And so the idea was that the key would push back as you not only work out where you were in the keystroke, but push back on that. And that was going to be part of the very first, even before we met Tony, part of the original keyboard design.
Right.
So there was all these weird, stupid things that we played with. And
It wasn't stupid by any stretch of the imagination, though, Kim.
Yeah.
I mean, touch-sensitive keyboards didn't come about until, help me out here, Pete, probably early 80s, I would say. Prophet T8 or something like that, I think, was one of the first touch-sensitive keyboards.
Even now, the inductive sensors are becoming a thing for like full travel touch sensitivity. So it's kind of coming back around.
So there you go. You were 40, 50 years ahead of your time.
Well, it never turned into a product.
Right.
So not really. But it was, good idea at the time.
Yeah.
So then I down at Point Piper, where we had the original office, next door to that, the workshop, I should say, on the waterfront, next door to that, there was a guy living in that place, which is called Altona, which, by the way, recently sold to the Chinese government for $60 million.
Of course. Cha-chink.
That property. But Bruce lived down in the boat shed. His parents rented the place out.
So he was he was your next door neighbour?
Next door neighbour, that's right. And and Bruce Jackson started a company in Sydney called Jans.
I know Jans.
Jans, Jackson and Story.
Is that what it stood for?
That's what it stood for, Jackson and Phil Story.
It was one of the biggest distributors they used to manufacture
that's right. So Bruce designed mixing consoles. He did live sound and do all that. Anyway, long story short, Bruce got a job with Clare Brothers in the US. And Clare Brothers were doing things like Elvis.
Just Elvis,
and they offered him a job. Long story short, Bruce ended up going over and working for them, and he designed a big console for them to take on the road with some of their biggest shows. And he was a brilliant designer. He taught me to solder, actually. He was a few years older than me.
Right. And can you just say that again? Solder with an L?
Solder.
Yes. Pete, can you?
Solder?
Solder.
Yeah. Sorry, Kim, this is an in-joke, right?
This is embarrassing.
This is an in-joke that Pete, or the Americans, cannot say solder with an L. They say solder. Sorry, I broke your flow. Bruce Jackson taught you to solder.
Yeah, that's it. That's true. And I was pretty good at it, and when Bruce was working at Clare Brothers, I think Elvis was doing some big outdoor concert, and his normal sound mixer was sick or something, and one of the brothers asked Bruce if he could do the show because they knew Bruce was capable of anything like that. So he did. Then he told Elvis that he sounded like shit, and
as we Aussies do, there's no filter.
And they needed to work on his system. And,
that's great.
So, long story short, I don't think Elvis let anyone else work for him after that.
Oh, do sound. That's right. Yeah.
And and Elvis bought Bruce an aeroplane for his birthday.
Oh, yes, as you do, you know. It's just you have an aeroplane.
A little one. And
but obviously Bruce could fly the plane.
Bruce could fly the plane. And then when we had the prototype of the first unit, we're thinking, how are we going to sell this thing? And it was just costing a ridiculous amount of money to make. And so I rang up Bruce and said, hey, do you know anyone who might be interested in this thing? It can play any sound. You sort of make a noise into a microphone and you can play it on the keyboard. And he said, what are you talking about? I said, well, you can make a sound and play it on the keyboard.
Now, we just have to just hold that for a second because you've got to backtrack just a little bit, right? Because what turned the Quasar, the whole definition of the CMI was when you guys invented the sampling. So let's
right.
We'll put a pin in. We're going to come back to Bruce, right? But let's roll back just a little bit. How you and Peter come up with the whole idea of sampling, because that's a great story.
Yeah. So as I mentioned, the 16K RAM chip had come out. We designed the thing, and then we realized, well, now we had waveform memory, a fair bit of it that was manipulatable. So why not just sample a real sound into it, which was completely foreign to everything we'd ever had in mind.
And you also had to create a way of getting the sound into the system as well.
Yeah. So Peter said, well, hang on, I'll go and do an A to D design. So within 4 days, he had a prototype A to D running. And and said, here, come and have a listen to this.
As you do. Hang on, I just need an A to D.
Yeah. So we had that running, on a breadboard in a shoebox, I think it was, pretty much.
Yeah.
And we thought, by this time, by the way, we'd met another guy called Michael Carlos.
Right.
Who was the musical director of Hair. He came to Australia as the head of a band called Tully.
Right.
But the government didn't want to let them in to Australia because they had a drug conviction of marijuana or something.
Oh, there wouldn't be many of those around in the 70s, would there?
No. Yeah, so but they got in. And so then Michael was musical director of Jesus Christ Superstar, the live show.
Yeah.
And he had the first Moog. Actually, he had the second real Moog in Australia.
Yep.
And someone said, you should meet Michael because he's got a Moog and he's interested in music and he's all that stuff. So by now we knew Michael pretty well, and we thought, okay, let's take over the sampler, this
breadboard
prototype A to D, and so we took it all over to his house, and he had a dog, and you could tell the dog to speak and it would bark.
Oh, awesome.
And as you can imagine, you couldn't get a very long sample in 16K of memory. So anyway, he was very impressed. We got the dog to bark, and that's in the sound library. It has been forever.
So that's the first ever sample, because I was about to ask you that, because there's been a little bit of a grey about what was the first sample.
Yeah, look, it wouldn't, of course, have been the first, but it was certainly the first interesting sample.
Right, yeah.
And so Michael was blown away, and at the time he was writing music for a movie, and he was always stressed out because, as you know, if you're writing music for movies, your critical path to the music actually, to the film actually coming out, everything else is done. So he was stressed out of his mind, trying to get this finished, and he said, I'd love to learn programming. Can you give us some info on it? And Peter gave him, what we had, and we didn't hear anything for a while. And then several months later, Michael rocked up with a floppy and said, here, have a look at this. So he stuck the floppy in, and he'd done a 3D waveform display.
Yeah.
Page D, isn't it, I think?
Yeah.
And we go, that's fantastic, you know. And I said, do you want a job? And so I talked Michael out of his music composition job, and that was the start of Page R.
Yeah.
Because of course Michael was a composer, he knew what had to be done, and he became a brilliant programmer.
Yeah.
It says something about the difficulties of scoring movies, that he learned programming to relax, essentially.
Yeah.
No, exactly.
But there was also another aspect of this story, Kim, of when you guys first invented sampling, you weren't overly impressed that you needed to do that, from my understanding.
No, we weren't. We thought it'd be fun but not. I mean, what it was used for, you know, to steal other people's bits of music. That was absolutely the last thing we would have thought of. And we had a distributor in Germany called Klaus Netzler, who had come to Sydney, and he'd gone floating down the Murrumbidgee River with his Nagra, sampling
thing,
river noises, and then he'd put this fantastic composition together, just out of lots of acoustic stuff, and it was really good. And I thought, that's what this thing should be used for, that sort of stuff, you know. Yeah,
but with the synthesizer side of it, the story that I've read, and you can clarify for me, was that both you and Peter thought that going the sampling route, and you'd kind of failed on your original endeavor of creating
additive synthesis.
Yeah, you'd failed in creating acoustic or real sounding instruments out of the additive synthesis. So you kind of considered sampling as cheating.
Yeah, and of course there was no way to do it with the processing power available in real time in those days. Ray Kurzweil came close with his piano.
The K250, that was about 83, I think, though, wasn't it?
It was probably around, it would have been 83, 84, something like that. And I remember him coming up to our room in a trade show and said, you did really well. That was, congratulations. It was great. And I thought, that's good. I wish we could do what you can do. So, but he was, he was a true genius, that guy. But where were we? Oh, yeah. So effectively, what happened with Page R was that we did an AES show in New York, and we had a room, as you do at trade shows, and Roger Lynn walked in with his prototype drum machine.
Of course, yep.
And said, can I borrow your setup? Because we had mixer and speakers and everything. I just wanted to give a demo to someone. And I said, yeah, of course. So he did this demo, and I'm looking at this thing. That's fantastic. We got to be able to do this.
Yeah.
And so actually, I let Roger do demos almost on the hour in there.
So what would that would have been, like 1980?
That would have been 80 or 79. It would have been really the first trade show we did.
Yeah.
Probably 80, I think.
Yeah.
So Page R, in a way, it was sort of like what VisiCalc was to Apple, Mm-hmm. What was it that made the Apple really popular? Well, it was spreadsheets to start off with, and word processing. And in a way, Page R was like that to the Fairlight. Once we had that, it really made sense.
Yeah, and Page R, just for everyone listening, is the real-time sequencer. 8-part sequencer.
Yeah, we started off calling it the rhythm sequencer, but then we just called it the real-time sequencer.
Yeah, because you could use it for bass lines and whatever else. Yeah.
Yeah. And we also had a thing prior to that. We had a thing called MCL, Music Composition Language, where you literally type in every note and how long it was going to play and how loud, and it was just ridiculous. But that was.
Yeah, and it was even just typing in a tempo wasn't exactly just typing in a tempo. It was something that was locked to what was it? It wasn't locked to sample rate. Was it locked to clock speed or something? I remember reading something about it. But even just typing in a beat per minute wasn't wasn't as straightforward as you would think.
No, that's right.
Yeah. Now, just let's wind back just a little bit from Page R, because Page R was really what kind of started the ball rolling, even more so than the initial hit when people started realizing what they could do with the sampling.
Yeah.
So Peter went over to the US. The first instrument, or the first person that he was demoing the machine to, was Stevie Wonder.
Yeah, well, it was, so Bruce Jackson said, yeah, we'll come over and I'll introduce you to a few people. And Peter took it over. And he introduced us to, I'm just trying to remember who was first. It might have been Geordie Hormel who was first.
Yep.
Geordie was any Americans will know that Hormel meats make Spam.
Right.
And
Right.
Geordie was one of the two brothers that inherited Hormel Meats.
The Spam Empire.
The Spam Empire, which I think was a good part of Minnesota, I think.
Yeah.
So Geordie had this huge mansion down the bottom of Sunset Boulevard opposite Will Rogers Park.
Right.
And he also owned the Village Recorder Studio. He was a musician, and he used to write music, for the I Love Lucy show.
Yes.
To give you an idea of vintage. And so he saw the Fairlight. And at the time Peter got to the Village Recorder in Los Angeles, Fleetwood Mac were recording the Tusk album.
Yes.
And so they wheeled it into the studio, gave a quick demo, and everyone's pulling out their checkbooks, writing out checks for $25,000.
Nice.
Which is what there was no one got a discount, by the way.
No.
We've got a thumbprint on Stevie's original check, I think it was.
Yeah.
And then he went to Stevie. Stevie was blown away. He was working on the Secret Life of Plants album.
Yep.
And while Peter was doing the demo with Stevie, one of Stevie's engineers says, "Oh, Peter would love to know about this," meaning Peter Gabriel. So he literally rang up Peter Gabriel from the LA studio and said, "Oh, you got to see this thing." Anyway, long story short, Peter ended up also taking it to Peter's studio in Bath,
In the UK.
in the UK.
Yeah.
And Peter's had a nephew called Stephen Payne, and Stephen said, "Can you why don't we set up a distribution for this thing in London?" And Peter funded it. So of course we had all of Peter's mates to go and visit, and they were all ordering it. So obviously Peter and I didn't know anything about marketing or business or anything. So everything was all very rough and ready, let's say.
Well, it was also word of mouth as well, because Peter Gabriel loved it, and he just went all in on it on those next couple of albums.
That's true.
And then, set up, like you said, he set up the UK distribution for you.
Yeah.
So he's just started inviting mates over. And, you've got, people like John Paul Jones from Led Zeppelin, Kate Bush, Jeff Downes, Trevor Horn, Alan Parsons, Rick Wright from Pink Floyd, Thomas Dolby. Yeah, here we go. And Howard Jones. I'm just reading a few here, and then that's in the UK. But in America, you had Stevie Wonder, Chick Corea, Herbie Hancock, Jan Hammer. I mean, really, just those four, Todd Rundgren was huge as well, so you hit the ground running, but it was it's just that tiny, it's not even 6 degrees of separation. What is it? Like a half a degree of separation,
Yeah, well, Geordie said, if you give me exclusive distribution for North America, I'll buy every unit you can make.
Yeah, yeah.
I said, let me think about that, Geordie.
Yeah.
Okay.
Why not? Yeah,
Yeah.
yeah. So that was around 79, 80?
That would have been 80.
Yeah.
80, yeah.
Yeah.
And the trouble was, after a while, of course, we ran out of Geordie's mates. And we started to sort of think, well, hang on, don't you need to do marketing and things like that? So I went over to Geordie and said, look, we need to appoint a decent advertising agency and get some stuff happening. I've organised one who's done a presentation. Do you want to come? And he said, yeah, of course I want to come. And because he was going to pay for it, And I turned up at his house at 8 o'clock in the morning or something, and he arrived at the door in his dressing gown and slippers.
As you do.
And I said, aren't you coming? He said, yeah, I'm coming. Well, do you want to get ready? I am ready. So we piled into his motorhome and
the good old Winnebago.
And driven out to this place. And of course, there's a row of them all waiting for us because they all knew who Geordie was. And, the CEO, the head purchasing guy, the creative director, I think there were probably 5 or 6 of them. And we're sitting across a glass table. They're all on one side. Geordie and I are on the other side. And Geordie's dressing gown starts falling open and Geordie starts falling asleep because Geordie had a bit of a nose problem.
Ah, yes, one of those, yes.
And so that tended to make him sleepy. And so he pretended to be asleep. I never have been able to work out if this was for real or he was actually falling asleep. It reminds me of Donald a bit in retrospect.
Yeah. So who were the people on the other? Sorry, who were the people on the other side of the table?
Well, they were the creative directors of this advertising agency.
Oh, right.
And the CEO and the purchasing manager and the thing, and they'd prepared a whole thing for us to, they were doing the whole sell, and actually we weren't that impressed, and I kept having to kick Geordie to wake him up. So, what did you think of that idea? And I don't know. Sometimes I wonder if he did it deliberately. He's sort of a bit like that.
Yeah. I'm getting flashes of the show Mad Men. Remember? Have you seen that? Which is about the advertising agencies. What went on in major advertising agencies in the 60s and the 70s, I think it was, in America. So, yeah, I've just got a flash of that. Yeah, Geordie showing up in the dressing gown, that's a classic.
No, it was good.
Yeah.
And so, long story short, we did a few generations. I mean, you probably know a bit of the story. We did the Series 2X. We did effectively, Pete, as the MIDI guy, we sort of did a pre-MIDI serial interface to our keyboard. That was serial.
Mm-hmm.
So in a way, it predated MIDI. I can't remember the exact details, but it was pretty good. It had about a millisecond latency. It was so we had serial interface to controllers early on. And we got involved with MIDI. I think that was the 2X probably.
2X, yes, yeah.
Introduced MIDI.
Yep.
And then we went to the 68,000 processor, which is a 16-bit processor.
That's with the Series 3.
That would have been the Series 3. And then we went to 16 channels. And of course, by then, we're running 16-bit audio. And we would have had, you might remember more than me, but I can't remember how long each channel could.
Well, you had 14 megabyte of RAM at standard, up to 32 megabyte is the spec that I've got.
Was it? Yeah. So there's quite a nice buffer.
Yeah.
And you see, that's what led to when I did Fairlight ESP, Fairlight Electric Sound and Picture. And I actually missed that we did a video product as well.
That was 85.
Was it?
Yeah, that's a little bit after. That was after the Series 3.
No. That would have been before. So the story with that one was that one of our R&D guys, a guy called Keir Silverbrook, came to me and said, "I've got an idea for a video product. Can I, use all the gear at night and develop?" And I said, "Yeah, of course you can." And a month or two later, he said, "Come and have a look at this." And he designed this thing called a collider pen, where you used a light pen onto a normal TV set, and it did all these kaleidoscopic images, and we played around with that for about 30 seconds. I said, "Yeah, kid, this is great, but I'm getting bored now." What else could we do? And, I thought maybe we'd be able to input some real video. Oh, yeah, that's a good idea. Okay, let's do that. So then he went away for another few months and came back. Okay, have a look at this. And now he had live video coming in, and we were doing luminance keying and chroma key, effects and then strobing and layering artificial video or titles. We had you could write things, and so that turned into the CVI, the computer video instrument,
right?
And we ended up selling quite a few of those. They were quite cheap. They were for us. They were like $3,000 or $4,000, I think, something like that.
Yeah, and just to put that into perspective, the Series 1, and I've got the pricing in pounds, but it probably translates to American dollars as well, probably back then. So the first one was like £12,000 when it first introduced, Series 1. Series 2,
which if we go by the 25K that you were mentioning earlier, that's over $100,000 today.
Yeah. Well, you ready?
Yeah.
Series 2 was £30,000, right?
That sounds about right.
Yeah. Series 3 was $60,000.
Yeah, Series 3 was scandalously expensive.
Yeah.
And yet, we didn't make vast amounts of money from these because we ended up going broke, with the 88 recession sent us under.
Yeah.
Because Peter and I, whenever we had lots of money, we did have lots of money, we had millions in turnover, but we just employed more people, more R&D people. But there was nothing put aside for a rainy day. We didn't know about those sort of things. And so we actually could have survived. There's a long story which I won't go into, or I'll get sued. But by then we had venture capitalists involved, and they were going to put more money in. But then we learned something about what had been happening with one of the new managers, and anyway, the money was pulled at the 11th hour, and that's what caused the Fairlight number 1 to go into receivership.
You mentioned it was £60,000 in 85. So I just quickly did the math on that. So Vin, do you have any guess as to how much that is in dollars today?
No.
$315,000 US.
Is that true?
Yeah. There you go.
Oh, wow. Yeah, no, that's a lot.
Yeah, that's crazy. I mean, you guys at that point were starting to reach market saturation though. I mean, how many more people would be able to afford that instrument?
Well, especially during a recession. You see, in 88 recession, everyone had stopped spending lots of money.
Yeah, and there was already about 300 out in the market, from my understanding, between the 1, 2, and 3.
Something like that. But I can't remember the exact numbers, but probably Series 3s would have been in the order of 100.
Yeah. And let's not gloss over the other thing that was happening as well, was that around mid-80s, you've got the Atari and the samplers like, the Ensoniq Mirage and the Acai's and all of, and the EMU.
Exactly.
EMUs coming in. They just were basically coming in at what you could probably spend $10K, realistically less. And you've got essentially what the Fairlight was doing. So that would have been pretty hard to kind of ride across as well.
Yeah, exactly, which is why, towards the end, towards 88, say 87, 88, we'd started getting interested in post-production and sound effects, and we had some units being used for sound design and things like that where they could afford it. And I mean, it sounds expensive, but when you consider what a soundstage costs to put together, do you know the dubbers that were used for doing soundtracks for films? You've got sprocketed mag film with say 6 tracks of audio on 35mm. Sprocketed stuff, and you've got a room full of these machines that are all locked together in sync using Selson motors, and so you move one sprocket, and every machine moves one sprocket, and each machine might be running half a dozen or more audio tracks on it.
Yep.
So you're down on the soundstage, and you've got to make an edit. So what happens? This team of people come leaping into the room of dubbers with their razor blades and sticky tape.
Oh, for fuck's sake.
And it was an absolute joke. And I'm thinking, this is crazy. So I'm thinking we need to make a machine that can do this, because by now we had 8 tracks of audio running before the demise of Fairlight number 1. In 88, we had 8 tracks of audio running from a hard disk.
Already. Yeah.
Already by then.
Yeah.
And we hadn't put it in a product, but we had that running. And then Peter by now, especially with the VCs, thought, no, enough is enough. I'm out of here. I've got a nice house in the Blue Mountains. Have a nice day.
Yeah.
And I said, no, I'm going to do post-production. He said, Peter actually helped me fund a little bit of the Fairlight number 2. He had a few bucks.
Yeah.
And we got our some of our key R&D guys, Michael Carlos and Paul Schlusser, Steve Rance, and some others.
So the Fairlight Series 3, but at that end point, the MFX, which became the post-production machine, that was already implemented, wasn't it, in the Series 3, or wasn't just yet?
Yes, it was. There was a version of it. Yes, there was. I'd need to be reminded about how the changeover happened and how much of that we'd already done.
Yeah.
I can't remember how much was done in the original company. I don't think much, to be honest.
Mm-hmm.
Certainly the multi-track was not done. That was done in the new company.
Right.
So basically what happened was the receivers came in. I said to Peter, I want to keep going. I want to do post-production.
Yep.
He said, well, you're insane. And but he helped me get started. We had some software underway for our existing CMI user base anyway. So I thought, okay, well, that could bring in a bit of cash flow with a new Fairlight, because people will pay for some improved software for the music machine. So we did that, and I found an old warehouse in Sydney in Ultimo, and it had an elevator in it that used to run on water.
What?
I'm just giving you an idea of the vintage.
Right.
It had then later been converted to electric motors, but it was the scariest thing to get into. And the top floor had holes in all the roof. So the whole top floor of this 5-story building was full of pigeons and pigeon shit.
Awesome.
But I needed a lot of space to put all the stuff that I'd purchased from the bank.
Yeah.
From Fairlight number 1.
Yeah.
Like I've skipped the bit where I negotiated to buy. The bank, by the way, had the mortgage over Fairlight, and I did raise enough money to with another company to buy the intellectual property back.
Yep.
And all the stuff that we did in auction.
Yep.
And there was a lot of work in progress, a lot of stuff. There was because I wasn't by the time Fairlight number 1 went under, I wasn't running it. Peter had headed for the hills probably a year or so earlier.
Yep.
So I was sort of overseeing the R&D, and the VCs had appointed another managing director, which I wanted to happen because I was just stressed out of my mind.
Yep.
I'm just trying to remember the sequence of events, but long story short, we bought the IP from Peter and I organised this. We bought the IP back from the bank for not much, like for $300,000 or $400,000,
Right.
and
well, it's still a substantial amount of money, though.
it was in those days. And then we had, we needed the same again to sort of just get things started.
So this is where Amber came in.
This is where Amber came in. That's right. So they provided the extra funding for that.
Yeah.
And so I took on so I went back to the CEO role for that.
Right.
And we got the guys working on the 24-track DAW. And the problem was we couldn't play 24 tracks because I wanted to use the existing Series 3 hardware as the basis of it. So so there wasn't too much blue sky to deal with. And so we made a matrix switching thing that dynamically could switch any of the 16 channel cards to one of the 24 physical outputs. So you could sort of put a sound on the screen and then you could see the scrolling waveforms on the screen. That was all Michael Carlos, and those guys did all the graphics and stuff.
Yeah, and we'll actually describe the detail of that as well, because I'm not sure whether Pete is familiar, but that was pretty unique.
Yeah, it was the first sort of scrolling waveform stuff and object-oriented editing and all of that. So,
right.
So the guys got all that happening, and it would look like, because post-production, of course, you don't have to run usually more than the 16 channels that we had at a time. So, and we had, in other words, we had 16 channels with quite a lot of buffer memory on each channel, but we could still only run a continuous 8 channels from the hard disk with the early version of that.
With the drives that were available at the time, yeah, of course.
Yeah, so if you had sort of Atmos or music, well, that would be continuous tracks, but you might only need 4 of those continuous.
Right.
And then you had another 4 tracks that you could divvy up between sound effects and dialogue and whatever else was going on.
Yep.
So that was how the smoke and mirrors that I did for the for the first 24-track machine.
Yeah.
And then, as you know, that all developed over the years, and we sold a lot of those. And they were $100,000.
Yeah.
And we were selling them to Todio, Glen and Paramount and Sony Pictures in Hollywood, and NHK in Japan ended up with 10 of them or something.
Yep. And, for the majority of us in music production, this was completely under the radar, right? Now, look, and I'm just speaking from a personal perspective, I was completely oblivious to the MFX during the 90s. And I was, I pride myself in being across all of the music technology that was emerging, especially in the hard disk space and the computer DAW space. Yep. And this MFX, you guys were just sitting under the radar. You'd cornered the market in that post area. It never really made a dent in the music production space.
No, that's right.
Probably because of the costing would have been part of that. So, everyone knows about, Pro Tools and, all the Cubase and all of that and all of the evolution of those. But while that was happening, you'd really pretty much done it in 1989.
Well, that's right. And that's where I wanted to take it. I knew that we wouldn't survive long with our custom-made processors.
Yeah.
With things like DigiDesign out there.
Yeah.
And at the time, everyone thought, oh, no, DigiDesign's just a toy company.
Yeah.
Don't worry about it.
Yeah.
And I'm saying, well, it might be now, but it won't be in another, 3 or 4 years.
Yeah. Well, they had Avid. They had the power of Avid behind them.
They had Avid.
Yeah.
So I was warning everyone that we needed to move down to a PC or a Mac. But, you get spoiled. When you've got your own operating system, you've got the source code to the operating system,
Right.
know that Windows was for spreadsheets and, it just was really bad at anything real time back in the day.
Yes, of course.
And if you had a bug, well, they tell you to just go to hell. And what was brilliant about DigiDesign is that they managed to just deal with that. They got Apple on board, and but it was a real struggle to get our R&D team to sort of give away everything that they knew, and had control over.
Well, look, I mean, the reason that you guys managed to do what you did was because you weren't navigating around a conventional operating system, a computer operating system. You had that tiny little, what was it called, QDOS or something like that.
Yeah, that's right. And it was very reliable, and it was bulletproof pretty much. And if it wasn't, we had the source code. We could fix it ourselves. So
yeah,
right.
I can understand the hesitancy from the technicians going, you want us to move away from our proprietary system that actually we know and works, and you want us to go to a Mac or a PC.
Yeah. By this time also we had new management in, we had new another venture capital company involved. Amber had taken over the management, which was fine with me. I never liked the CEO role. It was pretty exhausting.
Yeah.
And I was now getting interested in loudspeakers instead of getting bored with all this stuff. And I'd been working with a company called Lake DSP, who'd asked me to help them commercialize their out-of-head headphone technology.
Now, this was what's the timeline there about? It was mid-90s, somewhere around there, was it? Or
when would this have been? Yes, it would have been. That's exactly right. It would have been about mid-90s because I started Dex in 97.
Yeah.
And what they'd done is they had pretty much, I suppose I need to wind back a bit. I had a call from this guy called Brian Connolly and Dave McGrath when I was running Fairlight. And they said, you should come and hear this FIR technology. We've got it correcting a loudspeaker. Would you guys be interested? And I said, well, I don't think so. We don't make speakers but I'll come and see it. And what had happened was that they were working at the CSIRO, which means the Commonwealth Industrial Science and something or other.
Serums Laboratory or something.
Yeah, something like that. It's a government science sort of setup here in Australia. And they'd actually made a chip. Believe it or not, we actually had fabricated this chip in Sydney. That did FIR, but I think the chip was called the A5 or something. I can't remember, but it had about FIR, by the way, means finite impulse response, and it had about 250 taps. It might have been 500 taps of FIR, which probably a lot of you guys know more about FIR these days than we did back then. But that wasn't a lot. But I went in and heard the demo of this chip running a little 6-inch car loudspeaker that was screwed into a shoebox or something. And I heard it turn on and off, and I thought, wow, that's amazing. It definitely sounded better when they'd taken the measurement of the speaker, created an inverse FIR filter for it, and then played it. And I said, oh, that's fantastic. And then would Fairlight be interested? I said, well, no, I don't think so. But as we were leaving, I thought maybe we will. We'll have a thought. But as I was leaving, he said, oh, by the way, it takes about it's adding about 300 milliseconds of latency. And I said, well, I definitely can't use that.
Yeah.
But I think we know a way to fix that. And about a year later, I got another phone call. By now, they'd started their own company called Lake DSP, and they'd fixed the latency problem, and they had prototype out-of-head headphone technology, whereby, you put on a pair of headphones and the sound that you're listening to seems to be coming from outside your head.
Right.
So they used the FIR to simulate the HRTF function, we hear with. And so I thought, oh, this is great. He said, look, would you be interested in helping us commercialize this? And I said, well, what can I do? And he said, I don't know, maybe you'll have some ideas because, we just got to work out how to raise some money and do that. And I thought, well, the first thing we better do is make a little demo of it. So I wrote a script where Q calls James Bond into his office to get a demo of this out-of-head headphone technology, which the Russians were after.
Right, of course.
And I had a guy who absolutely nailed it in terms of Sean Connery's voice and Q's voice. And it was a little, I don't know, it was a minute and a half demo. And it ended up, long story short, on Paul Keating, who was our Prime Minister's desk. His office was next door to Lake's office in the city.
Right.
And Brian had run into him in the street, and somehow he chatted him into having a listen to this demo. So he sent up a little CD with the demo and a pair of headphones to his desk. The next day he came into the office and said, oh, that was amazing, Anyway, we explained we needed money, and he introduced Lake to one of his rich mates who invested $1 million or $2 or something like that.
Yeah, there you go. 6 degrees of separation again.
Yeah. So, and that started Lake off. But I said, Brian, why are you doing the headphones? Why don't you use this for loudspeaker correction? It's so obviously what speakers need. And he said, no, it's all too hard. We're too busy with the headphone stuff. Why don't you do it? And by now I was fighting with everyone at Fairlight.
Right.
And who wanted to stay high end, and I was trying to get them to go down market. And so I thought, okay. So that was anyway, that's what happened next.
So you left the building at Fairlight in what? We were trying to work this out yesterday. Was it around 99? Was that Was that the exit?
Yes, it would have been that, because there was a crossover period where I was still at Fairlight for like week on, week off at Dex. And actually the original company was called Clarity EQ.
Right.
And what had happened there was Brian had introduced me to a guy called Paul Glendenning, who he said was a brilliant engineer, one of the most brilliant engineers he had. And he'd be good to work with you on this FIR project. So Paul and I founded DEX. A lot of people call it DEQX, but we just call it DEX.
Yep.
And it stands for Digital EQ and Crossover.
Right.
Effectively, what it became was, or the reason I went to DEX is because it was sort of the next generation of active loudspeaker architecture.
Mm-hmm.
I don't know if you guys are interested in loudspeakers, but basically Pro Audio uses active loudspeakers, not passive. In other words, active has a separate amplifier for every driver, one for the tweeter, one for the mid, one for the bass.
It's definitely the most common. I don't even think you can buy passive monitors anymore.
For Pro, that's right. And that means you can use steeper filters, you can get better dynamics happening. You can use line level equalization to sort of make the frequency response more accurate and that sort of thing. But all of that stuff upsets the phase accuracy. And so the beauty of FIR is effectively everything's linear phase. So what happens in a loudspeaker is some frequency groups are delayed slightly compared to others. Okay, so you know that a frequency response is not perfectly flat. And so what we were able to do is to delay all the audio so that the on-time frequencies get delayed to the extent that the delayed frequencies can catch up, and then you glue it all back together again. So anyway, look, tell me if this is getting off the track, but that's just where we went next. And in effect, that became a sort of next generation of active loudspeakers where we were able to actually correct the group delays, called group delay errors in individual drivers. And then we used linear phase steep crossovers between drivers, so you also didn't get crossover distortion. So that's what I've been doing for the last decades, trying to make that work for audiophiles.
Well, you're about 4 generations in, but it's not only audiophiles, Kim. I mean, one of the first installations that you guys put DEX into, wasn't it? Was it Abbey Road?
Yeah, Abbey Road. They wanted to use it for their mastering. Actually, they were using it for their mastering, surround mastering.
Right.
And they just didn't want to spend a fortune doing work to the studio itself, acoustic actual work. They just wanted to do it on the cheap.
Right. So it's kind of like a time alignment phase correction type of technology. Is that?
That's right. Yeah. So the most basic thing that even traditional DSP active does is time align drivers, so that at least you can delay the tweeter a bit, so that at least it's not fighting with the mid-range driver. And they're all playing the same thing out of time with each other. So you sort of get this subtle flanging effect.
Yeah, of course.
So that's the basic, that's always been possible using DSPs, DSP active. So where we went, and it needs to do high resolution FIR needs about 100 times more processing. So we eventually, with our latest stuff, we've managed to get off DSPs and we've moved to, all the latest 64-bit multi-core ARM processors where you can get the grunt that you need to do it properly.
Of course. So, I've got a question. The dual concentric speakers that have got the tweeter in the middle of the horn of the.
Yes.
Do they actually behave differently to the more conventional?
Yeah, that tends to be more time aligned because the tweeter diaphragm is back pretty much at the same location as the start of the main cone, whereas normally if a tweeter is mounted on the front baffle of a speaker and the next driver is a couple of inches behind, it starts a couple of inches behind, the tweeter is almost never time aligned with the next driver. And we're just so used to that, we just put up with it.
Yeah.
And so there's two ways that DEX works. You can just take a any speaker already using their passive crossover, which is out of time alignment, and it will just correct. It'll do its best to correct whatever's going on. But ideally, you go to what we call DEX active, whereby we not only time align the drivers, but we have linear phase crossovers between them so that the filters themselves, once you go to a steep filter beyond single pole, beyond 6 dB per octave, you start getting phase distortion. And it's why a lot of audiophiles don't like active speakers, because by the time you go to a 4-pole filter, there's a lot of, it's called minimum phase, but there's quite a lot of effective phase distortion going on.
Right.
So the beauty of linear phase is that you don't get that. So it's what the audiophiles like. So we've been doing installations of active sort of horn speakers, for example, and the speakers might cost 300,000 euros, for example. We just did one in Europe.
And what kind of installations are they? They wouldn't be like private house. Is that a private?
Yeah, they are. They're just mad multimillionaires.
Oh.
And so. Yeah, so and our boxes we've got that we've been selling, we call it Gen 4. It's our 4th generation. It's the first generation that doesn't use DSPs. It's gone to the ARM processors.
It's gone to the ARM.
Yeah, it's also got streaming in them.
Get a couple installed in your car van.
Yeah.
Right.
We did win car audio competitions with our old models as well.
Yeah,
in America.
Wow.
Well, so I've got a question. So all of that time alignment stuff, that could never. I mean, how was it happening in passive speakers? Because we were chatting about this yesterday.
It doesn't. The bottom line is that the easiest way to get it to happen in passive speakers is to physically move drivers backwards. For instance, if you look at a Wilson Audio speaker, you'll notice the tweeter's tilted back behind, say, the mid-range driver.
So I remember I've got the KRK 6000s.
Mm-hmm.
They've got a concave tweeter, but it's still directly mounted in line, on the same surface.
Look, the difference can be very subtle, and it's not traumatizing. It's just reducing the resolution a bit. It's just that when you can fix all that, it just sounds more realistic.
Yeah,
that's the bottom line.
Yeah, so the reason I'm asking about the passives is that, and again we were discussing this yesterday. Those KRK 6000s that I've got, just with the humble like a Hafler, reference power amp.
Yeah,
it's not an audiophile quite. These are studio monitors. Yeah. I haven't found anything that can compete with the stereo imaging that I'm getting out of those speakers. And I'm like, wow, I don't know what they did.
Yeah, well, then. No, but you can. I don't want to give the wrong impression. You can delay using passive electronics. It's just that most crossovers don't bother to do it because it's quite complicated to do that.
Look, and I don't know exactly what they did on those KRK 6000s and even the 7000, 8000 was that whole series, the first series of KRKs. The sound of them has never been matched, even on the later, the active ones.
Yeah. Well, the whole soundstage, the 3-dimensional soundstage, is entirely dependent on the accuracy of phase.
Yeah,
that's the point. And so another issue is you want to get the distortion down, because where you've got any harmonic distortion happening, say in your left speaker compared to your right speaker, well, by definition, that distortion won't be phase aligning with the other speaker. Okay, so if you've got 1% distortion, which is not unusual for most speakers, it means that you've only got very clean phase resolution down to about minus 40 dB. If you can get it to 0.1%, then you've got resolution down to 60 dB.
Right.
Which is really worth going for, but it's hard to find speakers that have even 0.1% distortion.
Right.
It's why you need, say, magnesium cones, things like that, or ceramic that'll start giving you 0.1%. Some of the latest drivers will do better than that, and it also obviously changes depending on the frequency.
Well, I mean, you also have to be able to hear it, though. This is going to be the debate, though,
Well, no, things either sound realistic or not. Okay. You don't need to be an audiophile to hear it.
Yeah.
Things just, oh shit, that sounds realistic. That's amazing.
I will say the speakers, I've never seen the Wilson Audio stuff before, so I was just looking at some pictures of them. They are amazing looking. And based on what you're saying, I'm starting to see like, oh yeah, you do want some of these things aligned that I'd never even considered before.
That's right. But what they don't do, what no speaker does, is the alignment within one driver itself, because within the driver, you've got some frequency groups being delayed only by fractions of a millisecond. But our hearing is so incredibly sensitive. If you can tell the direction of where a sound is coming from, that's 50 meters away, consider the difference that one ear is hearing compared to the others. It's a fraction of a millisecond. 1 millisecond is sound traveling 1 foot. Okay, so it just shows how sensitive we are to the slightest phase distortion.
Yeah, and all this comes down to myself and Pete are very familiar with latency when it comes to recording and DAWs, and the argument is always going to be, well, who kind of works at those latencies? You'd be surprised, or who's going to hear a 3 or 4 millisecond latency when they're playing live? Hand a drummer or a jazz pianist. A round trip latency monitoring above 4 milliseconds or 6 even if 6 milliseconds is almost touch and go, but you hand it like a really proficient jazz, say pianist or a drummer, anything above 3 or 4 milliseconds, they're going to feel it, and that's going to start affecting things.
Exactly. Yeah. So the reason that we do it is that. I always thought, when people started talking about the concept of HD audio, back in the day, that suddenly it'd be like HD TV, 4K TV. You get this huge transition from your old Trinitron to a, 100-inch 4K TV screen. And it was never anything like it. Instead, what happened, you had companies like Sony who had these massive music libraries saying, HD, we're going to forget about CDs. We're going to, you can buy the original studio master. Well, that's all very nice, but it's all going wrong when it gets to the speaker.
Yeah, of course.
Like 100-fold. It's just a complete basket case by the time the signal getting to the speaker, even from MP3, can be quite nice, can be quite being there, realistic. But the speaker will, what's going on in the speaker is.
Well, it's going to be the last definer, isn't it? It's the
that's right. It's the weakest link. So that's why we tried to focus on that, and what we're trying to do now is just sort of make it more accessible to people and more affordable, and that's the plan.
I'm going to have to come up to Sydney for a visit, and you can sit me down in the studio and show me some of these DSP processors that you've got. So just we kind of skipped over a little bit, just with because the Fairlight story didn't end. So it ended. You kind of left in what was it? So I think we agree it was 1999. So let's just say it was just before the turn of the millennia that you'd left. Fairlight continued on, and we'll just cover that really, really quickly because we can segue back, right?
Yeah, and also went into music consoles. The Dream console, for example.
Yeah. So, but you were out of the building by then. I mean, I've got them listed.
No, I was sort of still around.
Oh, you were still around for the Dream?
But that took much longer to get working and debugged than everyone was originally hoping.
Yeah. Now they'd moved away from the original MFX Motorola type of dual processor configuration. So the first Fairlight Dream constellation was running on analog devices, Shark chips by the sound of it. And then your your idea of moving to, a more standard computer-based thing didn't really happen till about 2006.
That sounds about right.
With the Crystal Core card.
The Crystal Core. Yeah, which was a sort of, that was FPGAs, field programmable gate arrays.
Massive DSP horsepower compared to what was around with, say, for example, the Pro Tools HDX.
Yeah, and the early FPGAs, such as the one Crystal Core used, were early days. There were sort of crosstalk issues on the chips themselves. So it took them a while to sort of debug some of these edge cases where you had lots and lots of channels running at once. But, nowadays, that was a long time ago. As you know, Blackmagic ended up buying the Fairlight IP.
Yeah, in 2016.
Yeah, and so that was great. I mean, I just was very happy that it kept going and that a company like Blackmagic, who were very creative, had lots of resources to throw at it and to integrate it with a great video editor.
Yeah, DaVinci Resolve.
DaVinci. And of course, I knew that it was going to be all over bar the shouting with DigiDesign because, they became the standard. And once you're a standard, you're done for.
Yeah.
And it was one of the motivations for me to start DEX, but because I thought, how can they recover from losing? We had the market initially.
Yeah, of course. Throughout the 90s, you did, definitely. Yeah.
But what Blackmagic were able to do was to give the software away at the entry level.
Yeah, of course.
Well, that's one way to do it.
Yep.
to get people to use it.
Yeah.
And so, I just thought that was very clever of them. And, it's great that it's become very popular.
Well, I mean, they've clawed back a stack of the market there, not only within the post community. I mean, and you're right, DigiDesign. I mean, they worked very, very hard to ensure that they were the we'll call it industry standard. I'm using quote marks because they were heavily using that as a marketing catchphrase, even with the professional audio, not only in the post. And look, in post, again, they embedded themselves. That's what they did, Kim. They basically, where it was a Fairlight domain in the 90s, they worked very, very hard to embed themselves into that domain into the 2000s, and it still maintains that. So that if they are a standard, and again, I'm using my air quotes, it is still in that kind of post realm with audio. With video, I got to tell you, I think Decklink is, Blackmagic is definitely given them a bit of a run with DaVinci Resolve. And a lot of people that are staring at DaVinci Resolve, the audio part of it, they have no idea it's a Fairlight. Well, they have no idea of the genealogy, the history of just how powerful that audio engine is, because they give it away. It's like that's a Fairlight audio engine, guys.
Yeah, I mean, there's bits you pay for, obviously.
Yeah, but even the full paid version of DaVinci Resolve isn't really that expensive, then you've got of course the various controllers. Then you can start getting pushed into the $50K above as well, depending on how big. But I mean these control desk units are massive. They look absolutely incredible. But you can start at that basically the free area. They get people very, very accustomed to using the software, and then they can actually move them into, the larger consoles and stuff if they need to.
Yeah.
The Crystal Core card is still around. I mean, they don't call it the Crystal Core card now. I think it's just called the DaVinci card or Fairlight card. I can't remember what they call it, but it's only about $1,200 now.
Right. Okay.
But they don't really promote it that heavily. They don't tell you what it is. It's very, very strange. I went there. They said, "Oh, there's the card. There's the DSP card." Well, where's the spec of the DSP card? Very, very limited. So, very strange. But look, that's where the Fairlight ended up, and it continued on. But it also had a bit of a side pivot revival. If you don't mind speaking about that was 2009, but you weren't directly involved. This was Peter's project.
Yeah, so Peter did a version of it, and he had an agreement with the people that were doing Fairlight, an agreement to use the name Fairlight in a music machine, which you'd think, well, they shouldn't care about that because they weren't doing a music machine anymore. And Peter ended up in a lot of legal drama trying to get the rights to do that, to such an extent that he ended up doing law himself because he spent so much time in court.
Oh, wow.
So that was the cheapest way to deal with it.
I shouldn't be laughing, but I mean, talking about necessity being the mother of invention, you become a lawyer because you've been battling some legal battle, legal.
And he did end up winning quite a bit of money out of that.
Ah, okay.
Probably, I mean, not enough to cover all the time and effort he put into it, but Peter's now our lawyer at Dex.
Yeah.
He's also good at the odd technical idea. For instance, when we're trying to, I was saying, we're just working on more accurate way of measuring the distance, from our main speakers to subwoofers in rooms. And it's complicated because, the length of one cycle of 80 hertz, for example, where you might cross over to a subwoofer is the width of a 4 meter wide room.
Right.
So this is tricky stuff. He says, why don't you just use a ruler? So, but anyway, no, Peter's great. We still get on pretty well. And there's also another group who's started, I think it's called Freshwater.
Freshwater, yeah.
Yeah, who's designing a sort of Fairlight lookalike, even using a lot of the early software. They've actually got the code.
Well, they've got a plug-in card that goes into series 1, 2, and 2X. They can plug in the card directly into the systems.
Yeah.
But it's got an ARM CPU and all of the I/O and everything is just sitting on this one card now. So
that's right. So it also obviously does a lot more than the original Fairlight.
Yeah. It runs Linux and a separate real-time operating system for processing the effects. That looked interesting. But the machine that Peter got himself into a bit of a bind with legally. I mean, that was. It was called the CMI 30A, so that was the 30th anniversary. So that was started in 2009.
Right.
I started seeing like units of these. I think they're popping up at trade shows and stuff. Probably around 2012, I think.
Mm-hmm.
Now there was about 14 made. Again, that's just something that I'd found, whether that number is accurate or not. But there was at least some of the units made before the whole thing went kind of a bit belly.
Yeah, so it was all a bit sad, but I had nothing at all to do with that.
Right.
And never, I don't think I ever got to see one.
Right. So it was based off the Crystal Core card. I did confirm that. I actually found the original brochure, so it is definitely based off the Crystal Core card.
Right.
And then like on some of the promotion stuff, it was saying please do not use it as a normal computer. So obviously it was just it was a Windows computer. They're saying please just continue using this as an instrument only. Don't use it as a conventional computer. So that gives us at least a little bit of a glimpse of what it was. But that's interesting for me in the sense that whole Fairlight environment made its way over to Windows. There was apparently an updated thing called a CMI 30AX, but I don't think that ever got produced. But it was only just it wasn't a huge update, and it was offered for free for the C30A. So,
right.
And I know where there is a C30A in Melbourne, and it's actually usable. You can rent the studio space and get in front of it. So that'll be nice.
Yeah.
Now, you guys also had Fairlight had a 50th anniversary last December. You had some big shindig there that looked like there was a whole stack of the old crew had got together for that.
Yeah, that was quite fun. And it was just good seeing all the faces again. A lot of them not looking that much older, except for me.
Actually, now I'm going to wind right back, right, just real quickly, back to about the 80s around the series 2, especially with page R, because of the real-time sequencing and stuff, that the muso unions were basically shitting the bed over this thing, because they're saying, well, this thing's going to be taking jobs from the union members.
Yeah.
And they banned union members from using the Fairlight. And do you know the story of what Peter did to basically troll them?
No, I don't know that story. But by the way, there's another story, just unrelated. The Berlin Philharmonic Orchestra, Herbert von Karajan was the conductor back in the day. And this would have been the Fairlight Series 2, probably, 2X or something like that. He wanted to use real church bells that are in Parsifal, Wagner's Parsifal.
Right.
And the whole orchestra went on strike.
Oh.
Because they'd never had and didn't want any electronic instrument.
Oh, so he was playing the bells from the Fairlight.
From the Fairlight. He wanted the Fairlight to play real church bells. Prior to that, they used tubular bells,
Right. Well, the story that I heard that I thought was hilarious was that Peter received a call from the Muso Union, or I think he may have called them, or he found out that they were banning, they banned the members. So he called the union and asked to get a application form to join the union sent. Do you remember this story? And then
No.
he photocopied like dozens of these applications, and then he filled each application in, and the name on the application was Fairlight 1, Fairlight 2, Fairlight 1. And so he basically joined the Fairlight units that were in the country, right? He
made them members.
He made them members, paid members. And then
Sounds like Peter.
The union couldn't complain about, non-union, the union members using a non-union, because the Fairlights are all part of the union. And apparently they just lifted the pressure off and went, okay, you can, use it. So not only did you invent sampling, but you guys invented trolling.
Yeah, that's funny. No, I didn't know that, but that rings true.
Yeah, that was a story that I was watching a video, and Peter was being interviewed, and he told that story, and I went, that's a classic. So you weren't even aware of that one?
No.
Oh, there you go. There you go. Now, where were we? So we've covered the deck stuff, and we've covered all of the Fairlight pre, during, and post. I suppose, where are we? Well, here's a question that I ask all of my guests. Your thoughts on the current landscape with music technology in general.
Oh.
Which can include AI.
Well, okay, that is a good question. AI. The fact that AI can whip up something that used to cost $100,000 to generate, the sound is completely alarming, isn't it? I don't know what to think about it. I just think it's pretty freaky because however identifiable AI might be today, how long is that going to last?
Right.
Yeah, well, that's a long conversation that myself, Pete, and quite a few of the guests have had over the time is, the generative versus the creative AI. There are some nice creative aspects to it. But
yeah, I'm not saying it's particularly bad. I'm just saying, how are people going to survive with this sort of competition?
It's true.
Well, it's definitely, when they say technology has been a disruptor, you guys would definitely the Fairlight was definitely a disruptive technology back in 79 when you first introduced it.
Well, yeah, but nothing like AI.
No, and it found its creative. It found its creative space. AI is something that can be far not only disruptive, it can be actually destructive. I think that's going to be the difference.
I think that's the danger, isn't it? It's just hard to know where this is going to end.
Yeah. Well, I mean, with those song generators and stuff, and again, we've spoken ad nauseum about these, we've kind of tracked the progress of, when we first were looking at them, we were laughing how kind of obvious they were AI. But, within a year or two, we weren't laughing anymore. And now we're like, it is very, very difficult. And now it's starting to creep into the DAW production stuff as well. And so it's...
Yeah. Well, yeah, not to mention filmmaking. I mean, that's even more unbelievable.
Yeah.
So...
Yeah. Pete, did you have anything to ask Kim?
No, but I learned a lot of interesting things in this. So, Kim, thank you so much for that.
Well, thanks for having me. It's been fun.
Yeah. All right. Okay. Well, I mean, if there isn't anything else that you want to chat about, Kim, I think we could probably just wrap it up.
Yeah.
Very good.
Yeah. Okay.
Thanks for the chat. Thanks for...
Thank you.
Bringing back some memories.
Well, thank you very much for your time and energy, Kim. They're very, very much appreciated. And as per usual, Pete, thank you very much again. Okay. All right. Well, with that, on to the next.